She was born from a dragon, but cursed to die. Her clan hates her. Her father will burn her alive. And she already knows her ending. 7 years left, 1 tower, and the final villain is her dad. This is the story of the girl who was never meant to live. Watch till the end. The small black dragon, Zenith, stands before a gargantuan tower etched with glowing crimson runes that hum with power as a resonant sound echoes through the air. It exhales a long, weary breath of relief as it begins to ascend, its wings beating steadily. Zenith reflects on the absurdity of its situation. It never imagined being entangled with the final boss of a novel in such a way. Flashbacks of a previous, cruel existence flicker through its mind. A haughty woman named Elora looks down with disdain, demanding to know what Zenith is even capable of or what on earth it could be good at. Elora's verbal assault is relentless, cruelly mocking the child by stating they don't have to prove their motherless status. With a violent smash punctuating her words, Elora continues her tirade, asking if there is no sympathy for a father left all alone. Lyra, the girl Zenith once was, had already died a miserable death once before, and she seemed destined to perish again in this life after being left neglected by her father. To her parent, the cold and detached Lord Diomide, the concept of a daughter was nothing more than a hollow word, as he felt no bond to his own blood. Now in its dragon form, Zenith realizes it only has 7 years left to live. There is no known method to halt the impending honorable murder dictated by draconic law. Even looking toward Diomide for salvation feels like a lost cause. The Lord of the Tower would never truly accept Zenith as his own daughter. A soft clack sounds as Zenith acknowledges that no amount of desperate struggling will change the outcome of this situation. Instead of fighting the inevitable, the small dragon contemplates whether it might be better to simply enjoy the remaining time with a few small luxuries. This moment of quiet reflection is shattered by a sudden, violent impact. Zenith's eyes widen in shock as its wings flap frantically, caught completely off guard by a brilliant, blinding light that erupts nearby. A tall, blonde subordinate looks down at the small child, his voice sharp as he asks if she is the one claiming to be the Lord's daughter. Lyra looks up with a steady gaze, confirming that his words are correct. The man narrows his eyes in frustration, remarking on how annoying it is to be entrusted with such a small child before commanding her to follow him. Time stretches on, marked only by the persistent ticking of a clock as Lyra sits in a plush red chair, her mind trailing off into a deep, silent reflection. The door creaks open, and the imposing Lord Diomide enters, peering at the girl and asking if she is truly the one they call his daughter. He looks upon her with a cold detachment, stating that he has no idea what expectations she might have of him, finding the entire ordeal ridiculous. The subordinate intervenes, explaining the claim that the child was born of a union between the Lord and Bezlichera, the late Black Night Dragon. Diomide is unconvinced, dismissing the story as a one-sided narrative pushed by the dragons. As the name Bezlichera resonates in her thoughts, Lyra remains still. Diomide admits that she certainly carries her mother's resemblance, but the aide quickly disputes the claim of parentage. He argues that blue eyes are not enough to prove she is the Lord's daughter, suggesting she could be the child of any human man, as dragons are notoriously known for never being serious in their relationships with humanity. As Diomide turns to leave, Lyra sits quietly, her fingers tapping against her seat as the subordinate complains, once more about the annoyance of always having to clean up the Lord's messes. Zenith flops onto the plush red sofa, his gaze landing on the young girl as he asks what he should do with her, referring to her as Ashrid. Lyra immediately objects, clarifying that Ashrid isn't her real name but a label given by relatives who looked down on her human scent. With a steady gaze, she asks him to use the name her mother gave her, Jaina. Zenith remains unimpressed, leaning back as he wonders aloud what would happen if he continued to call her Ashrid, addressing her as a little kid. He notes that while he had been looking forward to meeting her, her father's cold demeanor was unexpected, prompting him to ask how she feels about it. Lyra closes her eyes, her expression one of quiet acceptance as she admits she never had any expectations to begin with. The bluntness of her words leaves Zenith momentarily stunned, his eyes widening in surprise. He begins to tap his finger rhythmically, staring at her in the silence before she lifts her head. Acknowledging her spirit, Zenith remarks on her bravery despite her being lost, questioning if she understands the sheer scale of the tower they are in. The scene transitions through the noisy, bustling atmosphere of the tower's surroundings. Zenith later scoffs at the idea that a dragon possesses no magic, laughing boastfully as he declares himself a genius wizard who will teach her. He instructs her to watch him closely, but as Lyra attempts to follow his lead, she asks tentatively if she is doing it right. Suddenly, a rush of wind sweeps her off her feet, sending her floating into the air. Zenith's arrogant facade crumbles into panic as he shouts for her to relax her body, realizing with horror that his own magic isn't working to bring her down. Lyra cries out in alarm, caught in a swirling vortex of magical energy that zings through the air. Since ancient times, in the world of the dragon race, this saying has been passed down like a legend. Dragons live for 1,000 years and can only bear children with the one they truly love. So, any child born to the dragon race is the miraculous fruit of an incredible love. Isn't this such a lovely saying? However, the golden vision fades as Alara lets out a pained, hacking cough, quickly followed by another as her strength begins to fail. There was one dragon from the clan of the Black Knight who gave birth to a human's child and had fallen into despair. She could never be with the child's father, who was a human, and because of the powerful curse put on her, she is forced to endure her suffering in solitude. With her energy completely spent, she collapses onto the forest floor with a soft, final sound. The tragedy of the Black Knight clan deepens as Alara is forced to part with her child early on. Left behind on her own, this young child, Lyra, is forced to navigate a world that despises her very existence. As she sits clutching a single red flower, the hateful whispers of the clan begin to swirl around her like a physical weight. They sneer in disgust, telling those nearby to look at that half-dragon freak. Her striking features, so different from their own, draw only malice, as they remark on her blue eyes and how they give them the creeps. The rejection is absolute. They bark that she will never be one of the Black Knight clan. A colossal, shadowy dragon looms over her small form, emitting a low, vibrating growl of pure intimidation. The shock causes Lyra to freeze, her flower slipping from her fingers and landing on the ground as the dragon slams its massive claw down in a show of force. The clan members worry for their own reputation, whispering that if the other dragon clans find out about this child, it will cause a massive ruckus. In this cold, dark environment, Lyra was not accepted by anyone. Countless glowing purple eyes peer out from the shadows, fixated on her with lethal intent. One voice suggests that it would be better to just kill her now, but a colder, more patient command rings out, stating that they can't kill her yet. The clan's cold resolve is final as they decide to simply hide Lyra away for the time being, treating her existence like a shameful secret. Following that heartless decree, they cast her out, sticking the young child in a desolate cave at the very edge of the village. Within those damp, isolating walls, all she can do is grieve in silence, her loneliness echoing in the dark. As tears well up in her vibrant blue eyes, she clutches a wooden doll, her heart hardening with the realization that they are all liars. She remembers the empty promises that the children of dragons were meant to be the fruits of love, yet her reality is devoid of any warmth. Overwhelmed by a single, agonizing question, she wonders why nobody loves her, the word why lingering in the air as a teardrop finally breaks free. However, her moment of sorrow is cruelly interrupted by a harsh voice calling her a freak. Despite her desperate wish for someone to care, she finds herself face to face with Taylor, who smirks down at her with pure malice. Taylor leans in, her purple eyes glinting with mockery as she begins to speak. She asks Lyra if she truly believes her human father will ever come to protect her, her words cutting deeper than any cold stone. The air vibrates with the sound of mocking cackles and sharp chuckles, surrounding the small, vulnerable girl. Lyra pauses, lost in a heavy silence as she contemplates her grim reality before she finally manages a single, fragile word of denial. Taylor's voice cuts through with a challenge, her purple eye narrowing into a predatory glare. Her dark silhouette looms over Lyra like a nightmare, delivering a crushing realization: there is absolutely no one left on the child's side. As time passes, the bullying never stops, pushing her further into the role of a pariah with every sunrise. Vicious insults target her appearance, with voices shouting about her disgusting eyes while the sounds of physical impacts echo through the air. The other children recoil in fabricated horror, screaming that she will give them cooties as they strike her. In this desolate existence, there is no guardian and no protector for the lonely half-dragon child. The hatred reaches a boiling point when a voice screams for the dirty half-blood to simply go and die. Lyra can only curl into herself, shielding her head and weeping as she faces the crushing truth that she must live in this misery every single day. Lyra was smaller and weaker than her peers, leaving her completely unable to stand up to their relentless torment. There was no sanctuary to be found, for it wasn't as if she could escape to the outside world, which was even more dangerous than the hell she already knew. She lived with the crushing realization that the best thing she could do for herself was to lie down and take it, offering no resistance to the world's cruelty. She held on to a desperate hope, believing that if she suffered and then endured some more, this painful story would end eventually. But a sudden swish of movement signals a change, and yet the hope of a peaceful end vanishes. A heavy step rings out as Taylor approaches, her cold voice calling out for Assured before correcting herself to address the child as Jaina. Even as she comes to a halt, this cruel wheel of fate keeps turning without mercy. Taylor looms over the girl with a piercing gaze, her presence radiating a dark power as she delivers the final betrayal, declaring that they can't look after her anymore. Taylor looks down with a cold, detached expression, explaining that they have been hiding the girl and asks her not to hold this betrayal against them. She delivers the crushing ultimatum: they can no longer look after her. Jaina's breath catches in her throat as a wave of confusion and disbelief washes over her, her eyes widening in shock. Taylor continues, stating that the other clans have likely noticed her presence, and cold-bloodedly admits that the only reason she kept the girl alive until now was a vow made to her mother. As Taylor turns to leave, Jaina dashes forward in desperation, crying out for her aunt to wait and asking what will happen to her now. Without looking back, Taylor mentions that besides her deceased mother, there is someone else who shares her blood. She reveals a name from the past, Diamid Belafanian. Jaina gasps, her heart hammering against her ribs as the weight of the name and the sudden revelation of a living relative sinks in. Taylor stares back with a piercing, ominous gaze, instructing the girl to go and find this human male. She suggests with a chilling indifference that he might even take her in if she tells him she is his daughter, as she prepares to abandon the child to an uncertain fate. Taylor closes her eyes, her voice steady as she addresses the girl by her true name, Assured, before quickly correcting herself to Jaina. With a final, dismissive command, she tells the child to do exactly as she pleases from now on. As Taylor's massive wings beat against the air, a powerful gust of wind rushes through the canyon, leaving Jaina collapsed on the ground in the wake of her departure. Looking up at the darkening sky, Jaina is struck by a wave of confusion. There was absolutely nothing about this turn of events in the original story she remembers. She reels from the sudden development, never imagining she would be forced to meet Diamid Belafanian this early. Her thoughts drift to the man himself, the biological father of the girl whose body she now possesses in this novel's world. The image of the man appears, seated regally upon a cold, chained throne. This is the man who, in just a few short years, will become the ultimate villain of this entire world. The narrative begins with the legend of Rosian, the male protagonist, who stands as a beacon of light against the darkness. His destiny is forged in blood as he takes revenge on the villainous Diamid for the cold-blooded killing of his mother, eventually plunging a sword through the man's heart. This tragic epic is merely a fantasy novel that Jaina had enjoyed reading in her previous life, back when she was a lonely child seeking escape in the pages of a book. In that original story, Diamid was described with more complexity than a simple monster. He was a great mage who eventually locked away his emotions and became corrupted. Long before his fall, he was originally a hero who was deeply respected by the public for his power and virtue. However, his heart shattered when the woman he loved suddenly abandoned him, leaving him in isolation. Then, for some mysterious reason, the hero was accused of being a murderer, turning his world into a waking nightmare. In his absolute despair, the man once hailed as a savior began his descent into the ultimate villain. Diamid kneels within a shimmering arcane circle, his hands desperately clutching his head as the weight of his despair becomes unbearable. The tragedy pushes him beyond his limits until his very heart is encased in cold, heavy chains that tighten with an audible metallic clank. He is pushed to the point of eliminating his own emotions entirely to survive the agonizing pain. His expression transforms, his gaze becoming vacant and shadowed as a heavy pulse echoes through the darkness. A few years later, the former hero descends into darkness, becoming a villain and a true murderer. He stands amidst the bodies of those he has slain, his cape sweeping over a hall of death without a hint of hesitation. His descent into depravity is so complete that he even turns a blind eye toward his own daughter being killed right in front of him. Jaina is engulfed in a roaring pillar of magical fire, her screams lost to the flames while Diomed watches with chilling indifference. Jaina realizes with horror that when she turns 17 in the novel, this is the grim fate that awaits her. Diomed stares into the inferno, his eyes reflecting the fire that consumes his own child, yet not a single spark of remorse remains within his hollow soul. The tragedy concludes with the grim revelation that the dragons murder Jaina in what they call an honor killing. Flames blaze and crackle around the fallen girl, while hooded figures in the shadows mutter among themselves, indifferent to her suffering. As the narrator observes the chilling scene, Diomed watches his own daughter dying. Jaina gasps in agony, her breath hitching as she struggles against the inevitable end. Diomed remains cold, his expression unchanging. He speaks without even a blink of hesitation, declaring that just as her birth was insignificant to him, her death means absolutely nothing either. Back in her current childhood, young Jaina reflects on her miserable fate, wondering why every father she encounters is so heartless. She is thrown roughly aside, the impact of her landing echoing through the room. She hadn't expected much from this new existence, but the realization that she has been cursed with another cruel father in this life is almost too much to bear. As she sits alone on the floor with her small trunk, the latch clicking shut punctuates her isolation. She remembers who she was before this cycle of misery began. In her previous life, her name was Min Bo Bei. Jaina's mind drifts back to her previous life, remembering when she was 17 and met a violent end, beaten to death by a father who never wanted her. Although she realized the moment she was reborn into this body that destiny is a fixed path she cannot change, the recent turn of events has left her shaken. She reaches down with a firm grab to take hold of her suitcase, casting a brief glance over her shoulder as she admits that what just occurred was truly unexpected. Her blue eyes reflect a deep understanding of her role as a mere extra, someone destined to die before the main story even has a chance to begin. In the original tale, there were only a few fleeting lines written about her, outlining a fate where she would perish before even the main character's mother passed away. This is why she never imagined she would ever have a storyline of her own. With each step she takes, the ground gives a cold crunch underfoot. A soft swish fills the air, and as a delicate crystal lands in her palm, she observes that it has finally started snowing. Jaina looks up at the falling snow with wide eyes, realizing that this is the first time she has ever seen it in her current life. She is struck by the ethereal sight, mesmerized by how beautiful the world looks covered in white. Her thoughts drift back to her past, realizing she has no memory of the last time she was allowed to step outside the dark cave she once called home. A profound sense of wonder fills her as she realizes she never knew the world could be such a stunning place. She remembers the cold dismissal of Diomed, who told her she could do as she pleased from then on. Resolving to take charge of her own path, she tells herself it is time to go. Her destination is clear. She will make her way to the magic tower where Diomed resides. Even though her story has veered into uncharted territory, she remains fatalistic, believing she will likely die at the age of 17 regardless of these changes. She does not expect any warmth or safety at the tower, doubting Diomed will offer any protection. In her mind, she will be lucky if he does not simply chase her away on sight. The massive magic tower looms before Jaina, a sprawling fortress of stone and sorcery that dominates the winter skyline. She stands small against its shadow, her thoughts clear as she reflects that the reason she has come to the magic tower is fixed in her mind. As she approaches the entrance, two armored guards stand at the ready. One clears his throat with a sharp cough, but she barely notices. With each steady step, she moves past the sentries, her hands gripping her suitcase firmly. She is haunted by the grim knowledge that she has only 7 years left to live. As she traverses the grand, sun-drenched hallways, past the rhythmic tapping of a guard's spear against the floor, she contemplates her short fate. To dragons who live 1,000 years, her remaining time is nothing more than a drop in the bucket, but to her, it is plenty of time. She resolves not to be greedy with the years she has left. With a quick turn of her head, she dismisses any lingering doubts, admitting to herself that she lacks any deep attachments to this life anyway. Her wide, brilliant blue eyes reflect a cold determination as she prepares to confront whatever lies ahead within the tower. The rhythmic tick-tock of a grand clock echoes through the silent, opulent room, marking the slow passage of time. Jaina sits alone on a plush blue sofa, her small frame dwarfed by the surroundings. She reflects that she has been waiting much longer than she anticipated. Noting with a sense of weariness that 2 full hours have already slipped away, she raises a porcelain teacup to her lips, rationalizing the delay. It would certainly be a headache for a man to suddenly be confronted with a daughter he never knew existed. As she takes a sip, she admits to herself that being treated like a burden is a familiar feeling. The tea has grown cold against her tongue, but she doesn't mind. Setting the cup down with a soft clink, she decides that being ignored is actually for the best. She imagines a peaceful life where she can settle in comfortably while being neglected by the tower's inhabitants. Counting her blessings on her fingers, she considers the practical advantages. Finding food in the magic tower will be far easier than in a dragon village, so starvation is off the table. Her eyes brighten as she realizes the vast library means she will never be bored. However, she suddenly pauses as a realization strikes her. Everything would be perfect, as long as she can successfully avoid her father. Her gaze drifts toward a grand portrait on the wall. It depicts a stern, imposing man, known as the one who loved the dragon Vesrus of the Black Knight clan. Jaina stares at the name etched in the darkness, speaking the name of Diamid Belafanian with a quiet reverence. She remains silent for a long moment, lost in thought as she looks toward the horizon. A deep, melancholy realization sets in. Even though her parents were of different races, she believes they could have been happy. It is a painful truth, knowing that life could have been different only if that terrible incident had never happened. The memory of the past surges forward to around 10 years ago, a time when the world was filled with ghouls due to the Ghoul King's curse. In the midst of that chaos, the order that the living and dead abetted by collapsed entirely, leaving the world in ruin. Diamid, determined to restore peace, wanted to eliminate the source of the problem by facing the Ghoul King. It was amongst his fellow members during this struggle that he finally met the one person who would change his life forever. The memory reveals the mother, Vesrus, a woman radiating a gentle light amidst a field of flowers. She reaches out with hands carrying a crown woven from blossoms. With a soft tap, she places the circlet upon Diamid's head, causing him to widen his eyes in a moment of pure shock and sudden realization. Unlike other dragons, she was compassionate and possessed a carefree personality that set her apart from her kind. Diamid gazes up, his blue eyes shimmering with a newfound intensity as he takes in her presence. Vesrus laughs with genuine joy, her expression bright and welcoming. She possessed a warm side that seemed to truly care for the people of this world, a kindness that was as rare as it was beautiful. Diamid looks down at her hands, a tender smile gracing his lips as the weight of his feelings takes hold. As if struck by lightning, he fell in love in that very instant. A gentle stroke of her hand over his seals the unspoken bond between them, and the two agreed to marry, their futures intertwined by a promise of love. But the peaceful memory is suddenly shattered by a blinding flash of blue energy as a magic circle erupts on the ground with a violent brilliance. The long-awaited victory arrives as the Ghoul King is finally defeated, but the relief is instantly replaced by a sharp, cutting confusion. Amidst a field of fluttering blue petals, Diamid's voice cracks with desperation as he demands to know what Vesrus is saying. All of a sudden, the promise of their future together shatters when he asks what she could possibly mean by wanting to call off the wedding. He trembles, insisting that it is not true, and that it cannot be true that she doesn't love him anymore. Grabbing her by the arms, he searches her distant gaze, convinced there must be another reason for this cruelty. He begs her to please tell him the truth, crying out her name one last time, as if to wake from a nightmare. Suddenly, he reacts with a sharp intake of breath, his eyes wide with a realization of imminent danger. With a fierce shout for him to not come near her, Vesrus swings with lethal intent. A violent slash cuts through the silence, and Diamid's heart hammers with a heavy thud of shock. Blood begins to drip onto the pristine white fabric of his robes, a grim testament to the love that has just been violently severed. Diomed groans in agonizing pain as he stumbles back, his hand trembling over his bloodied chest. His eyes are wide with a mixture of physical torment and sheer disbelief as he gasps out her name, begging to know why she has done this. Vesrus looks down at him with a gaze as cold as ice, her voice devoid of any warmth as she tells him that the stench of humanity on him is disgusting and she can no longer bear it. She continues her assault of cruel words, stating that if she had known he would cling to her like a helpless child, she never would have toyed with him in the first place. Diomed's heart thumps violently against his ribs as the weight of her rejection sinks in. Turning her face away in a gesture of ultimate disdain, she scoffs that she cannot decide if he is merely naive or truly unintelligent. As she walks away into the shadows, she declares she is finished with these childish games, leaving him broken and alone. Yet, although she ended things with such calculated cruelty, the truth remains that Vesrus did truly love Diomed. Her hands clench in hidden agony as she flees, and her eyes well with silent tears. It was all a desperate act to hide the devastating fact that she would not live much longer, her life cut short by a curse from the Ghoul King. As someone who knows the full story, Jaina contemplates if she could perhaps tell him the truth and perhaps stop him from becoming a villain. However, she quickly admits to herself that realistically it is impossible. He is a man who has sealed away his own emotions after being betrayed. Clenching her eyes shut, she turns her head away with a swish of her hair, feeling that while another person might succeed, she simply can't. She concludes it is better if she just does nothing. Suddenly, the door creaks open and a commanding voice demands to know if they are the ones claiming she is his daughter. Jaina's eyes widen in shock as the speaker warns they better be prepared to take full responsibility for wasting his time. As heavy footsteps approach, Jaina gulps in anticipation, realizing the man is her biological father, Diomed Belafanian. Her heart thumps as she senses his incredible aura, confirming the terrifying reality that he truly is the ultimate villain. Standing tall and imposing, Diomed looks down at them and demands they explain this to him. The aide confirms the details with a respectful nod, stating that according to a letter from the dragons, just before her death, a dragon named Vesrus of the Black Knight clan claimed that this child's father was none other than the Duke. He carefully qualifies the statement, noting that it is purely a claim without any proof to substantiate it. Diomed echoes the name Vesrus, his expression unreadable as he slides his arms together. In a moment of sheer terror, Jaina watches a hand reach toward her, her reflection trembling in her wide blue eyes as she wonders if he is going to kill her right then and there. Instead, Diomed firmly grabs her face, tilting it up to scrutinize her features. Jaina blinks in silent bewilderment, her mind racing as she tries to process his intent. After a heavy silence, Diomed softly acknowledges that he sees the truth, remarking that she really does look like her mother. Jaina gazes back at him, struck by the chilling realization that she cannot see a single emotion in his eyes as he looks at her, but still, she lingers on the unsettling encounter. Jaina finds herself locked in a trance, her thoughts swirling as she wonders why she cannot take her eyes off the imposing man before her. She searches for a reason, questioning if it is simply because the color of their eyes is so strikingly similar. Diomed scrutinizes her small face with a cold intensity, finally acknowledging that she does indeed have the same blue eyes as he does. Jaina reacts with a start of surprise as his voice cuts through the tension, devoid of any paternal warmth. He sharply asks what she expects him to do about such a coincidence, dismissively declaring that just because she shares his eye color, it doesn't mean she is his daughter. A dark, bitter resentment clouds his expression as he recalls a painful memory, certain that there is no way the woman who once called him disgusting would ever bear his child. With a final, chilling look, he decides there is nothing more to see here and abruptly turns his back on her. The heavy door creaks as he pushes it open, and he pauses to deliver a crushing parting blow, stating he doesn't know what she expected from him, but finding her efforts pathetic. The door slams shut with a resounding thud, leaving Jaina and the Aide alone in the crushing silence of the room. Jaina stands in the heavy aftermath of the rejection, her head bowed in quiet resignation as she reflects that she knew all along the Tower Master would never believe she was his daughter. Her thoughts drift toward the immediate future, calculating that if her expectations hold true, the situation is about to shift. Nearby, the Aide lets out a wary, deep breath, his patience clearly wearing thin. As his boots thud rhythmically against the floor with each measured step, he muses to himself that he never imagined the situation would spiral in this direction. With a heavy, unceremonious plop, he sinks onto the sofa directly across from the young girl. He looks at her with a mixture of exhaustion and irritation, lamenting how bothersome it is to always be the one saddled with cleaning up the mess left behind by others. Jaina remains perfectly still, watching him in a heavy, expectant silence. The eye idly shakes the documents in his hand, the paper rustling as he notes that the Tower Master left without issuing any specific orders, which means the Master is leaving the girl's fate entirely in his hands. A sharp, almost predatory glint enters his eyes as he leans forward, asking with a chilling curiosity how exactly he should have her taken care of. He stares directly into her wide, blue eyes, calling out to her with a mocking edge to see if the kid has anything to say for herself. Michael Belafanian. Currently, he is 18 years old. In the epic tale of the Blade of Revenge, he stands as the faithful follower and nephew of the ultimate antagonist, Diomed. This is the man who will go on to become the villain responsible for Diomed's most heinous acts. Recognized as a mage of unparalleled brilliance, second only to his uncle, Michael's past is a grim one. Following the early loss of his parents at a young age, he became consumed by an obsessive pursuit of magical prowess and accomplishments, a path that ultimately fractured his psyche and left him with a deeply twisted personality. Yet, despite the terrifying figure he is fated to become, he currently seems to take a perverse delight in tormenting the young child standing before him. Leaning down with a predatory gaze, Michael asks how he should go about taking care of her, mockingly addressing her as a mere kiddo. The young girl, Jaina, stares back with wide eyes, paralyzed into stunned silence as the sharp clink of a teacup echoes in the room. Jaina lifts her porcelain cup, taking a slow, deliberate sip before exhaling a breath of utter indifference. Without a hint of fear, she flatly tells Michael to do what he wants. The unexpected dismissal catches Michael completely off guard. He slips in his seat, nearly dropping his clipboard as a look of genuine confusion crosses his face. He stares at the small child, wondering what is with this little kid. As Jaina takes another calm sip of tea, Michael realizes she seems completely at ease, let alone scared. He questions if she even understands what is happening here. Deciding that he needs to be a bit more direct to rattle her, Michael leans forward with a predatory glint in his eyes. He mockingly suggests that she must have been looking forward to reuniting with her father, only to call the situation a shame. He points out that, as she just saw, their Tower Master is not someone who cares about family ties. He lets out a feigned, mocking cry of pity, exclaiming what a pity it is. Before shifting gears to introduce himself, he informs her that his name is Michael, and that, in formal terms, he is her cousin. His expression hardens as he commands Assured to listen carefully, claiming the only way she could survive here is something he is about to reveal. However, Jaina cuts him off mid-sentence, simply stating the name Jaina. Michael is momentarily stunned, stammering the beginning of the name in confusion, until Jaina firmly clarifies that her name isn't Assured, it's Jaina. She looks down with a piercing gaze, noting that Assured was merely the name written on the letter. Jaina falls into a deep, contemplative silence, reflecting on the origins of the name Michael just used. She knows that Assured was a name her relatives fabricated for her, a title given simply because they felt her true name smelled far too human. In her mind's eye, a cold memory resurfaces of her as an infant, where a voice decreed that starting that day, her name would be Assured. Michael taps his fingers against the table, noting that having two names is needlessly complicated. He wears a sharp smirk, mockingly questioning what would happen if he simply refused to call her Jaina. With total indifference, Jaina replies that if he chooses not to, then she simply cannot do anything about it. This dismissal causes Michael to lurch back in his seat with a groan of pure frustration. He seethes internally, calling her a little punk and realizing his threats are having no effect on her. He begins to wonder if she is truly a child, concluding that her lack of common sense must be a byproduct of being a dragon. Determined to break her composure, he decides he must force her to understand the reality of her situation. Michael springs up from his chair with a sharp exhale, fixing her with a stern gaze. He calls out to her, addressing her as a punk and commanding her to leave her things behind and follow him immediately. Michael rises with a sudden, purposeful movement, his white cloak snapping with a sharp flap as he turns away from the table. He declares his intention, stating that he is going to give Jaina a tour of the Grand Magic Tower. As they begin their journey, their boots click against the ornate flooring, each step echoing through the vast, shimmering halls. Jaina's attention is suddenly seized by the view outside, and she pauses in utter confusion. She notes that while it was snowing only moments earlier, the season beyond the glass has abruptly changed. She realizes with growing astonishment that every single window in this corridor displays a completely different landscape. Captivated by the impossible magic, she presses her hands to the cold pane, her eyes widening as she whispers that it is truly amazing. However, Michael's patience is thin. He barks back at her, demanding to know if she is merely crawling and commanding her to hurry up and follow him. Startled by his sharp tone, Jaina quickly responds that she is coming. Michael does not even look back, coldly warning her that if she continues to lag behind, he might just leave her there to fend for herself. Michael strides ahead, his long white cloak trailing behind him across the checkered floor. He looks back over his shoulder at the small figure of Jaina following him, telling her she has no idea just how massive this magic tower truly is. He continues his lecture, listing the windows, the ceiling, the stairs, and even the walls as examples of the tower's complexity. With a sharp snap of his gloved fingers, a burst of magic crackles in the air. Suddenly, the environment shifts. Snowflakes begin to fall around Jaina, landing with a soft plop on her head as a powerful whoosh of magical energy swirls through the corridor. Michael explains that almost every single area of this structure has been crafted through the use of magic. As they move through shifting landscapes of wind and floating flower petals that flutter through the air, Michael keeps his tone condescending. He warns her that weak and little ones like her are especially prone to getting lost or falling into traps. He leans down to her level with a smug grin, asking if she is finally starting to get scared yet. Jaina stares back at him with a deadpan expression, offering a flat and unconvincing agreement that she is. Privately, she thinks to herself how incredibly childish he is being. Michael turns away once more, raising a finger to emphasize his final point, telling her she better hope she doesn't lose sight of him. Jaina watches his back, reflecting on her unique situation. She realizes that, if she didn't possess the memories of her previous life, she likely would have fallen for this treatment and would have reacted just as he expected. Jaina reflects on her new life, admitting to herself that she had been momentarily happy to have found a family. However, she quickly shakes the thought away, telling herself that she mustn't forget her reality. Her fingers clench tightly into the fabric of her skirt as she acknowledges the painful truth that she is someone who isn't welcome anywhere. As she follows Michael through the corridor, she settles on a new resolve. Her goal is simply to enjoy the small luxuries of this world, and she insists to herself that she doesn't need a family. The heavy silence of the hallway is broken by a low creak as Michael pushes open a set of double doors, announcing that they have arrived at the Magic Tower's dining hall. Jaina's eyes widen in wonder, and she lets out a small gasp as she surveys the grand room. Her gaze is immediately drawn to the feast laid out before them, marveling at the incredible amount of food, especially a platter of golden, glistening pastries that seem to sparkle. A wave of genuine gratitude washes over her as she thinks about how glad she is that the dragons abandoned her, leading her to this place. Michael stops and looks back at her with a puzzled expression, asking what she is doing as she lingers behind. Jaina's thoughts drift to the rumors she had heard about mages not really caring about eating, and as she observes the scholars around the room, focused more on their books than their plates, she concludes that the rumors were indeed true. As Jaina steps further into the hall, the scholars' whispers ripple through the air as they realize that she is indeed just a child and question what she is doing in such a place. The murmur intensifies as they note that she is accompanying the chief mage, their curiosity growing as they wonder who she is and where she could have possibly come from. Michael, sensing the prying eyes, turns back with a look of pure ice, his eyes glowing with a menacing light. He sharply asks if they are enjoying the show and commandingly tells them to mind their own business. The weight of his glare is so heavy that one scholar stammers out a desperate plea for forgiveness, trembling under the sudden pressure. Jaina watches the scene unfold, acknowledging to herself that the stories she had heard about his terrible personality were definitely not lying. Fearing he might lash out at her next, she decides it is best to stay out of his way, but her focus quickly shifts as she realizes how delicious the food looks. She reaches out to grab several rolls, plopping them one by one into the folds of her clothes to carry away. However, Michael is watching. Holding a set of serving tongues, he looks down at her and questions why she is using her bare hands when there are plates and proper utensils provided for her use. Michael exhales a heavy breath of frustration, pointing out that breadcrumbs are now scattered all over Jaina's clothes. With a swift movement, he reaches out and commands her to hand the food over. As he takes the plate, Jaina can't help but retort that it seems noble dragons like him don't even know how to properly eat the lowly food meant for humans. She insists that she is capable of handling such a small task on her own, pointedly suggesting that he doesn't need to remain by her side. Michael's expression soars as he asks if he is bothering her, sarcastically questioning if inferior humans like himself shouldn't even dare to dream of sharing a meal with her. Jaina feels a wave of mental exhaustion, thinking to herself what a massive pain he is to deal with. Suddenly, a large plate of rolls is presented with a flourish. Michael casually mentions that he forgot to note one rule in this dining hall: it is strictly forbidden to leave any leftovers. He leans in, telling her she had better make sure she eats every single bit of it. Pointing a firm finger at her, he warns her not to say he didn't give her fair warning later. Jaina stares at the food, contemplating how the book she read claimed Michael was only ever interested in magic, but now she begins to suspect that might not be the case. She takes a large bite of a roll, and her eyes instantly widen in pure, sparkling shock as the delicious flavor takes her by surprise. Michael observes Jaina with a dismissive air, silently mocking her reaction by thinking it is as if she has never tasted bread before in her entire life. However, his arrogance quickly evaporates into sheer confusion, and he lets out a sound of genuine surprise as he stares at her. A soft, sniffling sound breaks the silence while Jaina chews her food, her face beginning to flush with emotion. Michael is left completely bewildered, his mind racing as he tries to process the unexpected sight before him. He wonders what on earth could be happening, questioning if his eyes are deceiving him. As the sniffling grows more apparent, Jaina sits before the massive pile of rolls, her eyes brimming with tears that begin to stream down her cheeks. Michael is struck with total realization, his composure crumbling as he confirms to himself that she is indeed crying right now.